Episode 3, Hangout in the Holy Land, post-Michigan. Michigan has been defeated. We don't give a damn for the whole state of Michigan. But first and foremost, there's some awards, some Buckeyes that have been honored for really, I guess, having outstanding seasons, maybe in one particular player's case, is an outstanding career. And those two players are Braxton Miller, named the Big Ten's Offensive Player of the Year, and John Simon, and a bit of a surprise, named the Big Ten's Defensive Player of the Year. Thoughts on either of those?
I don't really understand exactly how Braxton Miller ends up as the Offensive Player of the Year and wasn't first team All Big Ten as the quarterback. I mean,
Well, he was for the media. So.
for the video, but for the coaches, I guess this just kind of underscores the fact that people are not. You have to be so tunnel vision focused on your own team that you don't get a chance to actually watch the rest of the games. I mean, Taylor Martinez did have a great season, especially after all the crap that we gave him before the year started about arm punting everywhere. But he wasn't anywhere close to what Braxton Miller was able to produce, especially as far as being valuable to his team. So that kind of struck me a little bit, but definitely I think both of them deserve it. Simon was hurt half the year. Was really able to be the linchpin for the defense. Imagine what he would have been if he was healthy the whole time. He would have laid waste to everybody.
Yeah, his numbers were still particularly impressive. I believe he had 14 and a half tackles for a loss and 9 sacks, 4 of them coming in one game, his final game as a collegiate against Wisconsin, and a big win over a divisional rival. So that was certainly a strong way for him to close his career. Now getting this award is just icing on the cake. Urban Meyer called him the heart and soul of the team. I think that was accurate. So, we've seen John Simon be lauded for it. I still think it was more of a body of work thing because he's been so good for so long. So I think that probably played a big role in it. Also, Braxton Miller did have a phenomenal year. It's really weird, again, that he wasn't honored in that. And just some of those the defensive back of the year was Micah Hyde, who had 1 pick and also got completely torched by Central Michigan. I guess Bradley Roby wasn't really thrown at, so maybe that had to do with some of it. But, I think that you're right. You hit the nail on the head in terms of the coaches. I didn't think anything of the coaches. Any of the awards that they honor and their preseason watch lists and stuff like that is just all pomp and circumstance, essentially. I mean, those guys, like you said, their jobs is to watch tape of the teams they play in their own team, and that's about it. So they see 7 other opponents in their own, and that's all they can really judge their basis on. There's 4 teams they haven't seen.
Yeah, and it's probably not even the coach who's filling out those ballots. I mean, that sounds like something that's getting sent to somebody way down the pipe, someone like probably practically like us, who's filling that out. Well, I don't know about Ohio State's defense. They gave up all those points to Indiana, so let's give it to some guy from Iowa.
Now, let's give ourselves a little bit more credit than that. We watch a little bit more football than those SIDs probably do. And honestly, the SIDs aren't super credible either because, no offense, they do great work and they have to follow. They have to look up box scores and stuff like that and put together those PDF documents for the media for their teams and the teams they play. Again, that's an incredibly limited sample size of 8 teams. They watch their team and 8 other teams, and that's it. 9 total teams. There's 3 teams they haven't seen. So something worth considering. And also just some of those guys, depends on school to school. Some, Ohio State has a huge sports information department of incredibly hardcore people that's incredibly competitive for them to get those roles. They're probably going to be a little bit more learned than maybe some of the other folks out there that at smaller colleges that might just be maybe they got their degree, their master's or something in sports business that gets them the gig. It probably varies from case to case. Nonetheless, congratulations to those 2. Also, some Buckeyes getting various All Big Ten honors. All America will be coming next week, I imagine, or very shortly, for that matter. But we did see a variety of Buckeyes on both first and second team defenses. I guess the offenses and defenses. Folks did make a big deal about Ryan Shazier being second team on the coaches, which. Again, like I think I was saying before we started, I can't make too big of a deal out of how much I really care about these. But hey, as long as they get honored by one of the 2, I think it's a great award for their hard work. It goes to show that for as criticized as that secondary was, they're really talented. So C.J. Barnett came on really strong in his last 3 games. Iffy against Michigan, but I think that his physical body of work and just his attributes, I guess, that kind of gives him that particular accolade. I think he was an honorable mention, which I still kind of going into the season. I thought Barnett was terrible, so I'll take it. Travis Howard too also had an iffy on and off season, but he's again incredibly physically gifted and still had a decent body of work. So he winds up getting All-America. Man, I'm just getting ahead of myself. Travis Howard is All-America. My head's going to explode. But Bradley Roby certainly should be. Travis Howard, All Big Ten first team, along with Bradley Roby, depending on the teams that you're looking at. John Lyman gets accolades. Jonathan Hankins deservedly so. Ryan Shazier on the offense, I think, again, totally going off the cuff. So if I'm missing anybody, apologies to those players, to those fans of those players. But on the offense side of the ball, I think that we had Billy Brown was second team All Big Ten. Carlos Hyde, El Guapo, second team All Big Ten. Braxton Miller was first and second team respectively. And I think also Andrew Maxwell got some honors on the line, and Andrew Norwell, pardon.
I was about to say Andrew Maxwell got an award, like
maybe honorable mention. I sincerely doubt it. Yeah,
bottom 10 maybe.
Wish he was a Buckeye. Not even. And then left tackle Jack Muir was second team All Big Ten. So not a bad little load. It would have been nice to see Reed Fragel recognized. I think he was honorable mention, and nonetheless, some good things to build on. Definitely a nice season for those guys. And speaking of a nice season, a nice way to end the season with Ohio State going 12-0, completing a perfect season, just the 6th in Ohio State history. Michigan falls to Ohio State 26-21 in just a game that had me palm sweaty, nervous, heart palpitations, the whole 9 yards.
The game, as a fan, well, besides the fact that we won, sucked watching. I felt like this was the worst tribute to everything that we hated about Jim Tressel football. From everywhere from the second quarter afterwards, whether that was the play calling shifting in a more conservative direction, whether that was this persistent inability to put the foot on the neck for Michigan, wasting some scoring opportunities close, turning touchdowns into field goals or drives stalling out. But at the end of the day, what a great performance by the defense in that second half.
Absolutely.
After being completely maligned in the national press or the regional press for the past couple of weeks, to come in there and take an offense that's that dynamic, that has a playmaker as electric as Robinson, and they keep them from running on a stinking play on Ohio State's side for the entire second half is amazing. If you could do that, you don't need to score 40 points, which is really what a great way to end heading into next year. If the defense is able to produce shut down offenses like that with any kind of regularity for next season, Ohio State's going to be really tough.
Yeah, I mean, the Buckeyes are going to lose John Simon. They are going to lose probably Jonathan Hankins, who will go pro early given his high professional stock and grade right now.
He's going to be rich.
Yeah, but the thing is, that defensive line is so incredibly deep. We saw Adolphus Washington have that impact play. Noah Spence had a couple good games on the season. We saw Tommy Shutt. There's some great young guys that are going to just be filling in the gaps. We didn't even see Sevon Pittman this year, and there's going to be, even coupled with losing Nate Williams also, I think that this team is just going to be, like you mentioned, Ryan Chaser is going to be a year better. I mean, the guy's junior. He's ridiculous. Could have been Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year. Now there's a strong case to be made that he was even more important from on the field perspective. I think Simon gets the nod again, like I said, for a fabulous career and also just kind of his leadership and whatnot. Plus, doing all that hurt is just mind-boggling. But Ryan Shazier, probably the Buckeyes' best defensive player, will be back as a junior. And then, I think it's probable that Bradley Roby tosses his name in the hat, but we'll see. I hope he returns. Travis Howard departing for the Greener Shores of the National Football League. CJ Barnett should be back. Christian Bryant will be back. So
Storm Clyde is gone, and that I think that's worth 2 points.
Unfortunately,
right there.
He didn't play hardly at all at the end of the season. But Zach Bourne is gone, which is a big loss. I can't even believe I'm saying that. The guy moved over with 4 or 5 games to go with middle linebacker from fullback, having never played defense in his life, seemingly, and just absolutely took the position by storm. It was a huge revelation for the Buckeyes. The moment he went to defense, Tressel. You got Jim Tressel in my head after saying that the second half was Tresselian, and it was. Spencer Hall, Every Day Should Be Saturday, who went to the game in Columbus, his first Ohio State-Michigan game, his first, I think only his second trip ever to Columbus, definitely his first November in Columbus. He mentioned that the game had Myers' fingerprints all over it in terms of the intensity. Ryan Shazier's play was a lot like some of those SEC linebackers he was accustomed to seeing when Meyer was his coach at Florida, as a Florida alum and fan. But the second half, offensively and just approach-wise, was very, very Jim Tressel. It was Jim Tressel's players, and they look like it, which is not a bad thing. Kind of the best of both worlds. But Urban Meyer said that someone should write a book about Zach Bourne, and maybe they will. He played an unbelievable final game. That sack on Devin Gardner is everyone's favorite GIF of the year. And it's the guy's going to be missed. I thought maybe he'd be a great H-back this year, and he proved to be effective, but not quite as natural to fit in that offense as maybe James Casey was when Tom Herman was the offensive coordinator at Rice.
Yeah.
But I think that what we saw from him at middle linebacker is something we're not going to be fast to see repeated anytime soon. Eddie and Sabino, he graduates as well, so linebackers will be Ryan Shazier and a bunch of new guys. But there is some David Perkins, Joshua Perry. It'll be interesting to see which 3 they roll out and how they use them. But they've got just so much young talent, and there's some rumors today. I think Trey Johnson is a kid who decommitted from Auburn, who's Apparently, I got a visit from the from the Ohio State coaches coming in. Hopefully, they're on defense. But they do sometimes mix and match and have like.
Have you ever considered fullback?
No, I mean they do honestly have sometimes like Tom Herman will go recruit players on defense, and they'll have maybe Luke Fickell as assistant head coach do some of those duties for offensive players. It's not as common, but they do kind of mix up some of those responsibilities. I know that I can't remember who I saw the other day, but they said that like Ed Warner was their position coach as an offensive line prospect, but they were being recruited by maybe Stan Drayton or somebody like that. So I mean that's not offense to defense, but. They do kind of maybe mix up the responsibilities to spread the load a little bit more evenly, which Jim Tressel's team was more like wide receivers are recruited by the wide receivers coach.
Yeah.
Jim Bowman recruits 3-star offensive linemen. And
turns them into 1-stars.
Yeah, and we go from there. But we digress. Great day to beat Michigan. Great day to beat
Buckeye.
Yeah, exactly. Today just was the icing on the cake with those individual honors. It would have been nice to see Urban Meyer get the Coach of the Year award, but for all the hyperbole and people acting indignant, Bill O'Brien took a 9-3 team and made them 8-4. Well, it's not the award for who goes into the hardest circumstance and does the best. Well, I think it's the Coach of the Year, and if he did more with less, than Urban Meyer did with taking it at 6-17 to 12-0 is very impressive, mind you, but in a down Big Ten. Yeah, I get the fact that they had a rough start to the season, but they could have just as easily won those games against Ohio and Virginia. They could have been. Imagine if they'd gone 10-2. Like it wouldn't even have been a contest.
I haven't read anybody that's tried to make that argument. I mean,
it's all over Twitter.
I think that's ridiculous.
Tons of butthurt Ohio State fans.
No, I think it's pretty open and shut. When you look at what people were saying about Penn State, like beat writers that we both know and respect were saying that this is a 5-6 win team, that they were they're going to lose to Temple. It was this huge cloud of negativity, and they would turn that and not only be a competitive football team, but turn Matt McGloin into a legitimate, really good pocket passing.
The best passer in the Big Ten.
Yeah, no, give him all the awards.
Yeah, no, he did a brilliant job. He deserves every accolade. I'm completely fine with that. But nonetheless, still a great day for Ohio State award-wise. A great week, 12-0. No one can take that away from the team. I was going to make an NCAA joke, but I'll skip that. Knock on wood. We've had enough of that. Man. Yeah,
too soon.
Definitely. Lots of righteous indignation about Jim Tressel's presence that had absolutely nothing to do with the 2010 team or the fact that this year's team was ineligible. But beat writers are going to beat right, I guess, or national writers, I should say. Beat writers are actually by and large pretty cool, except for one notable exception who made it so they feel uncomfortable that Jim Tressel was there so soon. But I guess whatever you got to do for page views. But
yeah, troller's going to troll, man.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, let's shift gears here to wrap things up. We're going to talk about the ACC Big Ten Challenge. Always an interesting watch. The Big Ten in the last 2 years has really come out of their own and potentially passed the ACC, maybe even the Big East as the premier basketball conference in the land. So far, I keep looking over, just kind of take a glance at these scores. I got a couple different games on here in Washington, D.C., but I see Michigan has taken it to NC State. They're up to a pretty big lead early. It's down to 10, but they're still comfortably in control. And Minnesota is up by almost 20 on Florida State. So I think that these Big Ten teams are off to a strong start. There'll be some the middle of the pack games. I think will probably be a little bit more interesting to see. But what do you got happening? I think I saw on the site today you said that you thought the teams would split it at 6-6.
Yeah, I definitely thought Michigan was going to beat NC State. I thought right. At the beginning of the year that was a pretty overrated squad. Relative, they got hot for a couple of weeks, and I think Michigan's really, really good.
They are.
I'm really surprised by not that Minnesota was going to beat Florida State. I thought that could kind of go either way. I was thinking since they had Minnesota had gotten up for a couple of big games right before it, just beaten Memphis. Mm-hmm. That Florida State's not really an easy place to play, but they're beating them by 20. Minnesota. I was kind of down on them coming into the year, and their backcourt has just played a lot better than I think a lot of expectations. So Minnesota is going to be really tough. The game that I'm really excited for is Northwestern and Maryland.
This is an interesting matchup. I think it's two fairly even teams. So
yeah, they're pretty even. The concern I guess I would have if you're a Northwestern fan would be their ability to deal with Maryland's size.
Yeah, Alex Lynn has been impressive. I think he's had a couple 15-ish rebound games, maybe. So, or maybe that's Maryland as a whole. I'm thinking of their front court, but Lynn especially. You mentioned him in your preview of kind of the event as a whole as a legit 7-footer, and so Northwestern's not going to have anybody quite of that. Not only just the size, but the skill set. I think Des Wells is another power on the Maryland front line.
Yeah, Northwestern, I think actually has two guys at 7 foot or close to 7 foot in the roster, but they're both really young and they're really raw. So Northwestern, I think over the last 2 years has done a pretty good job of upgrading their athleticism and their talent base, especially in the front court, because rebounding is where they've been getting killed the past couple of years. They're having to play Sherma at center, and it was really undersized down low, and I think that's going to prove in the future. Whether they have the body and the muscle to tangle with Maryland's going to be interesting, but if they can, I think their out-of-conference schedule sets up pretty nicely, and if they go 500 in the Big Ten, then that's a tournament team.
No, we say that just about every year.
I know. One of these years, we have to be right. I mean, it's just like statistical averages. Yeah. So it'll be fun to see them. There's a couple of mismatches. I think Purdue is sneakily pretty bad. I don't think Clemson's.
You've been saying that all year, so any particular reason why you're down on Purdue?
Well, I mean, Purdue did not has. I've watched Purdue a couple of times. I saw them in the first half in the UNC Wilmington game, which I think was tied, and UNC Wilmington is like a mid to low 200s KenPom team. I think they came back and won by 20. They lost to Bucknell, which is probably the second best team in the Patriot League, to Lehigh. And I mean, I used to go to American. I'm a big Patriot League guy. That's not a quality Big Ten team should not lose at home.
Yeah,
to Bucknell.
At least SB Nation's Purdue blog, Hammer and Rails, tend to think that some of it, like one of their games was an official job where they just like got some brutal calls down the stretch that forced overtime and they wound up losing in the OT. Probably still should have won, all things considered. But
yeah, that was Villanova.
Right, and then also I think just like some of it was just some weirdness of having this young team kind of still gelling together. Maybe they are bad, maybe they're just raw. I mean, we'll have to see. I think I mentioned earlier, I said that Deswells was a front court player, implied that he was. He's definitely not. He's an athletic swing guard. Still, for Maryland against Northwestern, that's a concern because Northwestern doesn't have any kind of athletes the caliber of Wells, who's kind of a late eligibility to clearance for the Terps. But interesting to see that, Big Ten versus Big Ten future matchup, right? So, and in terms of Purdue against Clemson, Clemson's got, again, just kind of some athletes that I don't necessarily that Purdue can hang with. In the past, Purdue probably, has had the ilk of guys that could make it happen, but we'll see what kind of happens there. I think Devin Booker is a nightmare matchup for whoever Purdue decides to put on him, and what are your feelings on Michigan State going against Miami? It's kind of a down matchup for the Spartans. I know they haven't opened great, but
I'm a little bit higher on Michigan State than I think a lot of other people are. And I feel like Izzo does this every year. You look at the
he really
team.
does.
Yeah, I guess Gary Harris is really the only guy in this team that kind of screams superstar, and he's not really that much of a superstar. But Sparty can go 9 or 10 deep. And even though they're a little bit banged up right now, there's not going to be a huge difference in production. And they're really well coached. I mean, they always seem to have a problem with turnovers kind of in the early season, and I guess that wouldn't surprise me if that's the case against Miami. But look, just talent-wise and schematically, I think they're a lot better.
Yeah, I know Harris has struggled with a shoulder injury, and there was even some doubts if he was going to be available for this one. But if he's there, they can definitely. I mean, Miami is kind of a plucky team too. Jim Larrañaga came from George Mason. He talked about the Patriot League, and he's done good work there.
Well, Mason's in the CAA.
Yeah. I'm sorry, but the ilk of
they're called the Patriots.
Yeah, I know that's maybe what I'm thinking of. But nonetheless, like he's brought in kind of this like Moneyball type approach to putting lineups together. It's been really interesting to watch. So it's definitely a matchup that I think should swing in Michigan State's favor, but you never know. Weird stuff can happen in these kind of tournaments. Georgia Tech, Illinois is a weird matchup. Kind of two rebuilding team. Georgia Tech maybe a year ahead with Brian Gregory going into the second year, but at the same time, like Illinois just absolutely romped through Maui. So I gotta think that Illinois is probably going to win that one. Some of the other matchups, I guess, of note. The big one is obviously tonight, North Carolina, Indiana. And that's interesting. Like Indiana, I think is probably the prohibitive favorite. North Carolina, especially late in egg against Butler, but I just feel like this is the type of game that Indiana can maybe overlook and see if that makes any sense.
I don't know. I mean, it's kind of hard to overlook a game against North Carolina, right?
I know, especially at home. But it's still just like it feels like a game. I guess PJ Harrison might be out for the Heels, and that probably changes things. But
that's what I've heard. I imagine that the atmosphere there is going to be completely electric.
Yeah,
I'm not sure how good North Carolina is. I don't know if they have anybody who's like a real post presence for them. Whether they have the ability to kind of mix it up, and I think Indiana has some depth. They can kind of play a bunch of different ways. Maybe if we're playing this game a couple months later after North Carolina's gelled a little bit, things might be a little bit different. But right now, I think Indiana would definitely would be a strong favorite in that game.
I think it might just be wishful thinking that I hope they lose.
Well, it's gonna be fun. There's definitely gonna be a lot of points, and I'm not really a big Indiana fan either, but that's just gonna make it sweeter when we beat them during the conference playoff. They run through all these strong teams.
Absolutely,
got to boost that RPI.
Got to wrap things up. Let's go ahead and talk Ohio State Duke. Big matchup tomorrow night. Maybe Ohio State's biggest game of the year until conference play. I think I said tonight on Twitter the Michigan-Ohio State game this year could have a very football-like feel with how good both those teams are, especially if they go 3 rounds. So we'll see if they meet in the tournament, in the Big Ten tournament. That'd be amazing. But at least in terms of what we're dealing with in the present, Duke is by all accounts the most accomplished team so far, just in terms of the caliber of opponents they beat. So they could arguably number one. They're not. Indiana is, but Duke may be the best team in the country. Unbelievably good at home, too. I think they've got a 95-game out-of-conference winning streak there in Cameron Indoor. Ohio State goes there. I think it's the first time ever the Buckeyes have been there. For all Aaron Kraft and Deshaun Thomas brings to the table, it's going to be a lot different from last year when the Buckeyes just absolutely rolled Duke.
Yeah.
You predicted Duke, I think, to win the game. Any particular reasons why?
So, I think this would be another example of a matchup that I think might be a little bit different if it was played a little bit later in the season. Mm-hmm. Ohio State probably has the single best scorer on the court and will have the best individual on-the-ball defender on the court in Thomas and Kraft. My concern with Ohio State is that other than those two people, there seems to be a little bit of uncertainty and influx about the defined roles of everybody else on the team. The front court production, especially with Amir Williams, has not been very consistent. I'm sure Mata would love to be able to play him more than 13 minutes a game. It hasn't been able to do that right now. The third scoring option has been a little bit inconsistent as well. And with Duke being a little bit more experienced team, I feel like, especially after the caliber of competition they played so far, really has a much more defined idea as to the role of each player on their team. They know exactly what they need to get from Curry, what they need to get from Plumlee, what they need to get from Cook, and I think understanding the kind of team that you are and exactly what everybody needs to do in these early season situations is going to be a pretty big advantage for them. And Cameron is a ridiculous place to play. The one thing where I think Ohio State might have a chance is I think that the Quinn Cook Aaron Kraft matchup is something that Ohio State can win. I think you
read my mind.
Yeah, I think Cook is somebody you can force into turning the ball over. I think Kraft can get into his head, and if you're able to do that and get yourself a couple of easy baskets, and limiting Duke's ability to shoot, then you can definitely put yourself into the game.
Yeah, I think Cook has had a fine start to the season, maybe even exceeding expectations in that role, but he hasn't met anybody the caliber of Aaron Kraft. And I think Kraft is going to just be a nightmare matchup for him. I think the interesting thing will be, just how Deshaun Thomas, how much he's able to get his shot off. If he keeps that in, the same clip that he's opened with these last couple games, he's going to get his. He's going to score a bunch of points, but is it going to be enough? I think that's going to be interesting to see. I'm not quite sure I have a prediction yet. Maybe a slight Ohio State lean. That's probably just the homer talking, but Duke is definitely tough, especially on the road. We'll see. It's one of those things where, as a fan, I'm cautiously optimistic as, maybe trying to be a little bit more objective. I think that Ohio State may actually have the matchup in their favor, as good as Duke is. But, we'll see. The last time Duke had a 95-game home out-of-conference win streak, Illinois went into Cameron Indoor and took them. And I think that was in 1995. So the Buckeyes want to repeat history as a Big Ten team, head down into Cameron Indoor and win a game tomorrow night. We'll certainly take it. Anyway, joined by Matt Brown, I'm Luke Zimmermann. Hang out in the Holy Land, Episode 3. Thanks as always. Go Bucks.